Well, I know it is just after 5:30, and I do want to say respect your time. And I want to thank you, first of all, for coming, taking the time to be with us tonight. I think we've got some great information we're dying to share with you. And I am happy to have you here. I'm happy to welcome you. I am Wendy Mill. I am a program coordinator, a youth advisory here at the Governor's Prevention Partnership. We want to take a moment to first of all thank those people who made this presentation tonight happen. The New England PTTC and DEMIS were very happy to have them supporting programming such as this. Tonight, I just want to let you know that we will be recording, tonight's session is recorded, and we will be sharing it with you, and others will be posting it on our website for those who could not join us this evening. So that will be coming to you via email, along with any of the handouts and other materials that we'll be sharing. We are scheduled to run for 90 minutes, and we'll try to keep it to that. Certainly we'll make ourselves available if there's conversation following over that, but we do want to stick to that 90 minutes for you. Questions, feel free to ask your questions throughout the presentation. We'll be monitoring the chat. You can also use the raise your hand feature, and we'll be watching for that as well. We'll have a question and answer that will be addressing any outstanding questions at the end. And with that, I would like to jump right into our material tonight and introduce to you our featured speaker, Leanne Dodge. Leanne Dodge is a program coordinator at SoPo Unite, All Ages In, located in South Portland, Maine. Leanne's been doing some amazing work with the youth there in South Portland, and we're real excited to hear her comments and have her share some of the materials with you. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Leanne can go ahead and share hers.
Great. Hi, everyone. And feel free if you ever want to show your face, that would be marvelous too. But we are going to use a PowerPoint presentation. So no pressure, but if you want to. And thank you so much for having me here. I am just going to see if we can get this. Does that, Wendy and Jessica, can you see that? Yeah, okay, great. Super. Well, welcome. Thank you for having me. And we're going to get started. And this topic, just in case you're in the right place or not in the right place, this is Nothing About Us Without Us, and the collective impact of collective youth impact in prevention. And ironically, I don't have some of my students with me tonight who were going to help co-present. We had a snow day last Friday. I don't know if you folks did, but it really screwed up the schedule. The two of these students are athletes, and so they had rescheduling of swimming and track. So it's just me, and I'll try to be youthful. And I wish they could be here with you tonight, but we'll try to go on without them. And again, my apologies about that. So let's get started first. And this comes from the PTTC. I won't read this out to you, but just the important part of the views and opinions represented in this webinar are not necessarily the views and the opinions of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, SAMHSA, or the New England PTTC. So I have to say that. And then we are going to, we've already started with in the chat, but if you're just rolling in right now, is to put your name, if you're a student, a young person, what year are you in school? Or if you're not a young person in school, what is your role if you haven't done that already? And the city or town that you live in, and something unique about where you live. So for example, I'll tell you a little bit about my background, and so I'll tell you what's unique about where I live. But first, I wanted to tell you who I know and places I know in Connecticut, because I have family all over Connecticut. So I thought I'd rattle off where I have people in Fairfield, Niantic, Norwalk, Bridgeport, Milford, and my dad went to Yale. And I thought I would put up my little mouse pad. He went to Yale back in the late 1940s after World War II, and he went to Yale Seminary and became a congregational minister. So I have some Connecticut connections. And so I'll tell you a little bit about where I live in Unique in Maine. I was born outside of Detroit, Michigan. Then we moved to Long Island, New York. Again, my dad was a minister, so they often move around. Long Island. And then mostly I grew up in New Hampshire, outside of Keene, New Hampshire, if you know where New Hampshire places are. But I'm in Maine for love. And here's the story. I mostly went to school, mostly grew up in New Hampshire, and dated someone my junior year in high school for 3 days. We broke up and graduated, and we didn't see each other again until our 15th year high school reunion. And we have been married now 20 years. So I always tell high school students, like, go to your reunions, there'll be somebody left. And so Andy Dodge lived up in Maine, and I was going to choose either. So at this 15th year reunion, there was a couple of single guys. They kind of ask you, like, raise your hand if you're single, go dance. And so it was Andy Dodge or this other guy, who I won't say his name because it's on the recording, but he was colorblind and double jointed. So I picked Andy Dodge. So that's what brings me to Maine. And I'm thrilled to be here and probably going to live here the rest of my life. So thank you for sharing some of where you're from and a little background about you and Unique. And we'll look through those chats too, and just to connect. A little bit about my professional background. I have really started my career at the University of New Hampshire, and I went to school there too, and I studied communication, psychology, and theater for undergrad. And then I stayed on for 10 years and was a hall director. So I lived on campus for 10 years. And by the end, I was living with about 600 students that I was in charge of. And I think that's where I first got my taste, if you will, of substance use prevention. I went on to work with younger people at the New Hampshire Teen Institute, middle schoolers and high school students, and then moved to Maine, got married, and then have worked mostly in colleges and universities and in community coalitions across the state. And along that way, I also got 2 free master's degrees. So I always tell people, like, go work at a university and you'll get a free degree. So I have a degree in elementary education and also in adult and higher education. And so it's been really great to have a lot of college experience working in colleges, but now I'm housed in a high school here in South Portland, Maine. And it's always been my dream to work with people before they leave high school, like to, really do true prevention with younger folks. So we are going to, and again, I'm a certified prevention specialist, and I also teach the class for folks who've been arrested for operating under the influence. So I do some intervention work as well. And I teach the class just for folks under 21, and they have to take this course, which some people may have heard of. It's called Prime for Life, and they have to take it in order to get their license back. And I've been teaching that for about 19 years. So just thinking about that, I'd like to just keep going here and tell you a little bit about SOPO Unite. We are one of the drug-free communities coalitions, and there's 15 of them in Maine. We are in our 6th year. We just got another 5 years of funding. We did 5 years so far. And this is our mission: to create a safe, just, and healthy community to prevent youth substance use. And we work with young folks. Our focus is on 0 to 18-year-olds. And through our data, we found you have to choose 3 substances. So we work on alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana prevention for young folks. And South Portland, just, is got about 25,000 people live in South Portland, but by day, there's over 100,000 people that are down here working and we're the 4th largest city in Maine. So it's not very big for 25,000 people, but we have a lot of folks here. And we, if you know anything about drug-free communities coalitions, we work with all different sectors of the community. We work with schools, law enforcement, faith-based organizations, health professionals, businesses, all of that. So there's like 12 sectors. And one of them is youth, is one of the sectors. And typically, drug-free community coalitions don't always have access to young people, or they focus mostly on adults in the community that have an impact on young people. But strangely enough, I got to be housed here in the high school. And excuse me. So in 2016, I started in November. And for the grant, you're required to have student representation. You're supposed to have at least like one young person to put on the form. So we started back in 2016 with actually 3 students, 3 white athletes. And over the years now, we now have over 80 students in the group. And we have 50 in each of the middle schools who are kind of our feeder group. So we have really 2 big groups of students. We have 2 middle schools. So this has definitely grown well beyond what we ever imagined in just one community. And I think a couple of the pieces that we're going to go over today will show you why it's such a vibrant, lively group and big and keeps growing. And one of the key things is that this is not the NARC club. So you might think back for the older folks in the room, like you think like, would I have ever been in a substance use prevention group in high school as a club? I don't know. So when we did start, we asked students, should we have you folks, would you want to sign a substance-free code that, like I will not use? And the student said, yeah, no, I don't think we want to have to sign something like that. So we kind of thought, well, probably the older students, the leadership team that we had, maybe have higher standard and just, kind of reinforce that they are role models for younger students, but we never had them sign a code. And there's a school in Maine that actually does have their students in their group sign a code, and they actually put their names up in the lobby of the high school on the wall. And if they have strayed from the code, their name gets taken down off the wall. And I remember hearing that going, oh, that's not good. And working with, if anyone's ever worked with Sandra Del Sesto, she's kind of a big guru of prevention, but she said, oh gosh, you don't want to alienate the very students that you want to have involved. And she said, how about considering a substance-free lifestyle? And so that's really what is important to us, is that this is a group of students that is really interested in having, again, that mission of a healthy community. And what does that mean? And when we started, the students said, you know what, we don't want to really do anything for our peers. Not interested, but we'll go down to the middle schools and we'll work with younger kids. And I know there's some people here, I think, that do some mentoring programs. And this is right up your alley of that these older students really, and even think of your own experience of how much we looked up to the high school students when we were in middle school and what an impact they have on us. So that's really how the group started. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the brain. And just so that you know, today we're going to do some interactive things together, so it won't just be me yammering. And I also want to think of, if there's anyone out here later, I'm going to need one volunteer to do a little role play. And so it has to be someone who's stubborn. So think about that. If you're someone who's kind of stubborn, you're my person. But let's talk about why prevention is so important, why youth are so important in prevention. And it's often the group we leave out. We'll look around and go like, yeah, everyone's here at the coalition meeting. And then, oh, we don't have really any young people here. Well, they're busy. But we often forget how important youth are. And just so you know, too, all of these materials and more will be shared with you. And if you ever want to meet with me and chat some more one-on-one, I'd be happy to do that. But let's talk about the brain and why prevention is so important. First of all, some of the students I see now have been in our group since 7th grade, and they're now seniors, and it has flown by. So that always reminds me that we don't have much time with young folks. It's quick. It's a blink of an eye and they've graduated or, finished school. So while we have them here, prevention is so important. And the brain, as we all kind of maybe know, is the best time for learning without much effort, they've found in studies, is from 13 to 20. that our brains are best for learning. And it doesn't take too much effort for us to, at that age, to really pick up things really quickly. The other thing they know is that the brain is ready to take risks at 13. That part of the brain is developed, that reward center, what feels good at 13, ready to go. So, and you can raise your hand or thumbs up for this, but how many people remember your parents ever saying, what were you thinking when you were 13? You're like, I wasn't. Yeah, here comes some thumbs. Or I love this one. If your friend jumped off a bridge, would you do it? And these may be some oldie, maybe some new ways of saying it these days. And probably some people go, well, maybe, like which friend? And is there water? How deep is it? Who's going to be there? And so we know that, again, that risk-taking part of the brain's ready at 13, which is great for prevention. We really want to encourage risk-taking. It doesn't mean jumping off a bridge or whitewater rafting every night, but it's healthy risk-taking. So trying out for a play, learning a new instrument, meeting new friends, those are risky activities that we want to actually promote. And so that's at 13. We know the brain's not fully developed till our mid-20s. And the brain doesn't just magically wake up at 25 and go, hey now, prefrontal cortex, judgment, reasoning, caution, I'm all set. It happens in the interaction, in the environment, and with experiences. Because some people go like, I know some people that I don't think 25 was quite it yet, or they probably still don't have great judgment. But so it doesn't just magically happen. It's with the interaction with other people. So the young brain's so important. So if we teach it good stuff, that can stick. And however, 90% of addiction starts before the age of 18. So again, this is why it's so critical to do this prevention now with young people and to do it the best that we can. The other key thing that we know about the brain is that there, you can see this picture that they did an experiment, and they did with like an MRI machine, and they put it on adults' head, and they asked them questions, and all just kind of crazy questions. And one of them was, would you eat a light bulb? And the adults, all the adults in the study, boom, no, right? Let's not a chance. That sounds dumb, right? There's an immediate reaction in the brain. However, when they did it with young people, their brains lit up and they still said no, but it took them a little while. And in fact, kind of lighting up the possibilities like, well, this could be a cool poem, like just this kind of creative thought process. So when you think about the adult pathway brain and the pruning of the neurons have happened, boom, no, judgment's figured out, where young people might have more creativity and more of a winding road. And so that's really critical too, to think about those possibilities that a young brain and open to new ideas, that to really harness that and take advantage of it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do something called Jamboard, which I love, and I hope people maybe have done before, but if you haven't, I'm going to, let's see if I can just get out of here a little bit, and I'm going to put in the Jamboard link to all of you in the chat, and let's see if this works. Let's see if I can find, let me see if I can stop share. Hey, everybody, and a few pictures of folks. I'm going to put this in the chat, the Jamboard, and I'll describe how to do it. If everyone could click on that for a moment. And let me know if you're able to access that. Are people able to do that? So you should see over here this kind of board, and we're going to go through a few of these questions tonight up here and throughout this evening. And on the left-hand side, you'll see a little thing that says sticky note. It's the fourth thing down there on the left. And what I'd like you to do is get a sticky note and answer this question. If you're in school right now, or if you ever were, what kinds of things were you involved in, like specifically? So were you involved in any clubs or organizations in school? I'm going to write, I was in Latin club and musicals, and I was a cheerleader, but not really good at it. And I sang in the church choir. So just take a minute and jot down, and this is all anonymous, which is kind of nice. So you can just jot down, and let's just see how many, a number of people, what kinds of things you were involved in school or in the community. This is awesome. We have to see if there's any connections between folks doing this work all together. And let me know if you're having any trouble. So some people had jobs after school. And jobs. Look at all the things that you had to balance, or folks that are balancing that right now. A lot of great stuff here. And just give yourself a moment to look at all these different things, volunteering. And you can draw, you can see there, marching band. And so we're going to move on to the next question too. And you've already done some of these. So if you are someone who's not in school right now and older, you can think of this right now too. What are you involved in? Any sports, music, art? What were you good at in high school, or are good at academically? Were there certain classes that you did better at? Can you speak more than one language? And if so, what languages are there? And if you were an athlete, how many sports did you play? What sports were they? If you were a musician, which instruments did you play? If you're an artist, what kind of art are you? What's your medium? So take a minute to answer that. So currently, are you doing any of these activities still, or what, thinking back to high school? So again, on those sticky notes over to your left.
Leanne, you want this on the same board, right? Or we go to the next board?
Go to the next board. Sorry about that. I know it's on mine. I was able to click to the next board. So if people go, oh, great. I see some.
So we need to advance to the next board.
Oh, yes. Advance to the next slide.
Okay.
Thank you so much. To number 2. Folks can see that. I just see Portuguese. Oh, here we go. We got some people coming in. Currently coaching football. And again, any classes that you might, fluent in German and English. Awesome. Great. Anything else, people? And if you played instruments, which ones, or which athletics?
I'm impressed by the number of bilingual and multilingual people in this group. That's really, really incredible.
It's awesome. So we just, you could just keep thinking of the things that you're working on or you're still doing. Other artists, I see some gardening. So this is very cool. Now I'm going to just switch us over back to the PowerPoint. Can people see this again? Oops. Let me see. Just trying to, somehow I can't see everybody here. Don't you love technology? It's so fun. Let me ask my folks here. I'm going to just go from here. I can't really see people. But what I wanted you to think about is back to this great brain and your brains, and best for learning from 13 to 20. Now, it doesn't mean you can't learn after 20, but it's a little, takes more effort to do those things, to learn. Let me just see if I can do this here. I hate to not see people in person, but we'll have to do that. So I want to talk a little bit about this great brain and really how substances can impact that brain and the skills that we need and how they impact all those things that you just wrote about that you were good at or are still good at. And so just a few quick things. One of the things we know around alcohol and cannabis or marijuana is that it can affect our abstract and critical thinking skills. So can anyone unmute and tell us what it means to think abstractly? Or critically? Anyone got an idea? Well, I'll tell you, and I teach this in health classes. One of the things to think about abstract skills is to think about things that are not right in front of you that you have to figure out. And so that means, so when you think about the things you just wrote about that you're good at, so we saw some athletics and some musicians and language and classes and skills like that. So do you need to have, and this is rhetorical, do you need to have abstract skills, or again, thinking outside the box, figuring things out that aren't right in front of you? Do you need abstract skills to be an athlete, play a sport, to figure out a play or, next steps in a game, coaches' instructions, things like that? So probably yes. And then you think, if you're a musician, do you need abstract skills to play an instrument? Again, music is a whole nother language, so it is an abstract skill. And think about art. If you're an artist, or if you're in any class, you ask students like, what classes do you need abstract skills for? Once you say math and then English, and then you keep going, that it's really all classes you need those skills. So it goes on and on. But one of the things we know about substances is that it impacts those skills, not just when someone's using, but especially with alcohol, up to 72 hours after the use. So that means, if you're good at math, 3 days. So if I drank on a Thursday night, which college students that I work with, that's when the weekends were starting. That means their abstract and critical thinking skills were not back in place at their best until Sunday. Now, I didn't drink Friday night, but I drank Saturday night, so 72 hours later. So it's not until Wednesday that I have those skills back. So when you think about those skills, that means I might have 1 day a week, just from 2 nights of drinking, like it's just on the weekends. 1 out of 4 college students drop out their freshman year, and not always just from substance use, it's for many other reasons too. But you can see what an impact that could have on our academics. And oftentimes, when did college students drink? Well, oftentimes during finals. So if I had a good friend that was leaving early and was done finals on Tuesday, but I had still Thursday, maybe I could still party and recoup and I have an extra day. But really think about how it can impact our academics and longer lasting effects. Then the other key things too for people to just think about, the things that are important to them are now getting affected by their substance, of things they might be passionate about. We also know that alcohol interferes with REM sleep. And just asking young folks, like, well, what is REM sleep? Well, it's one of the deepest phases of sleep, and you dream in it and rapid eye movement, but it really, in REM sleep, it refuels and helps with our memory. Anything we learn during the day gets stored into long-term memory. You can think of your brain at night as a cluttered desk. And if you go into REM sleep, you actually organize that desk in your brain and organize those files. You also do problem solving in REM sleep. So when you think about that piece, and it's not just math, again, that would be helpful. And we could raise our hands, how many people like math? And I'm going to just close this down so I can kind of see folks. So thinking about your brain and math skills and any class, and then raise your hand if you've ever fretted about anything before bed. You got something going on the next day, just put a little thumbs up. Anyone ever gone to bed at night a little stressed, like we wouldn't be alive if we didn't feel like that? So actually, and have you ever gotten into sleep that night and somehow magically got a good night's sleep, and the next day you're like, boom, bring it on. I'm presenting to I don't know how many people from Connecticut tomorrow night. Bring it on. Has anyone ever had that feeling? And people even might say to you, just sleep on it. You should sleep on it. You'll feel better in the morning. Well, you probably went into REM sleep. So now let's add alcohol to this. So when you go into REM sleep, if you see my fingers, your synapses and dendrites in your brain connect. And you do that problem solving. Your immune system kind of gets repaired. Again, that memory. Now drink. More than 5 drinks for males, more than 4 for females in one episode. You actually don't go into REM sleep. And they're finding this also with high potency marijuana, that you don't go into REM. Even if you got 10 hours of sleep and crawled your way to the dining hall, you didn't get REM sleep. So what would we see happening? People getting sick, mono, problem solving, fretting, and not kind of taking care of my emotional health. So REM sleep is critical, and substances interfere with that. Short-term memory gets impaired with marijuana for sure. And learning is all about short-term memory and storing it into long-term memory. And if I didn't catch it the first time, it's gone. And then finally, there's something that people might not know is called state-dependent restriction. And that means if I learn something when I'm sober, it's actually best recalled when I'm sober again. But if I learn something when I'm impaired, it's best recalled when I'm impaired again. So in the beginning with substances, it's usually funsy social skills. So in the chat, if you'd like to share, write something, what's something someone might learn at a party when they are impaired? What happens at a party? Or if anyone wants to unmute, what are some skills that kind of unfold when someone's socializing with substances? Any ideas? Anybody in the chat? Well, I'll just share some thoughts. Nefarious how-tos, drinking game. Yes, drinking game. So beer pong is a classic state-dependent restriction. People suck at it sober, but if I've had a couple of drinks, right in the cup. Playing pool, and people go, oh my gosh, that's why I have to have a couple of beers before I'm any good. Where did they learn pool? Probably in a bar. How about talking to people? Makes it easier, right? People I don't know, hey, what's your sign? Cool. How about pre-gaming? What is pre-gaming? Pre-gaming is, I would talk to students, there's no way I would show up to a party sober. Are you kidding me? Like I have to drink ahead of time. So I'm like there, ready to go once I get there. So state-dependent restriction in the beginning is usually funsy social skills. But over time, people are actually better at those things. So now anytime I need to use those skills, I have to be impaired. I'm not hammered playing darts. It starts at a 0.08 to about a 0.15, and it's a window. Anytime I am in that window and I have to access that skill. So I'll tell you this, there are some folks that say they drive better impaired. So when did they learn how to drive? When they were impaired. Raise your hand, and you don't have to say a name, but did you ever know any teachers in high school that might have had state-dependent restriction, might have even used while they were in school? Any thumbs? We got a couple, we won't say who they are, that people think back like, oh yeah, I think he had a flask in his desk drawer, right? So even teaching, or, you know, all different professions. So again, the younger someone starts, the more state-dependent restriction could happen for a lot of skills for someone that they're going to need to use in order to access those skills. The good news is you can undo state-dependent restriction and relearn those skills without using. So those are some things to just kind of think about with the brain. And so I'm going to share again back to the sharing of the PowerPoint. And we're going to keep on going here. Let's see. And can people see that? The slides? Okay, great. I know, it's so annoying. So we're going to rattle on just two quick pieces, and then we're going to do another activity. So how many people have heard in the prevention world, people say, and you see it in movies and, you know, documentaries and things, and people might say, if I could just save one life, or if I've made an impact on at least, you know, just one person, that will make all the difference. You know, his life will have meant something, right? Has anyone heard that? That kind of, I could just touch one life, this will all be worth it. And that's marvelous sounding. And here's that little poem about that, the starfish story. And you can see it there, but the guy walking along the beach, and all these dead starfish are coming up on the shore, and he's throwing them back into the ocean. And an old man kind of says, what are you doing? It's not going to matter. And you're not going to save them all. And the young man picks up the starfish. Well, like, it matters to this one. Like, touching one life. And that's all well and good. But we have, in my high school here, 1,000 students. So if I was done after just working on one kid, there would be 999 others that would not be attended to, right? So we need to think about broader prevention work with young folks. And here's another great poster. I love this too. Holding young people solely responsible for underage drinking is like holding a fish responsible for dying in a polluted stream. So really to think about, well, what's in the environment that's causing these fish to die in the community and in the system. So we're going to just go over a few things. And I'll tell you a little bit about how our youth have been a big part of environmental strategies here in South Portland. And we're going to just give some examples that these are the things that contribute to substance use, and how available, how easy it is to access substances. So here in Maine, as I think Connecticut, I'm not sure if you are a legalized cannabis state, but we have legalized cannabis for folks over 21 and over, for adult use, or people might call it recreational, but we try to not use that word because it sounds like just funsy time. But so we have in South Portland 15 cannabis shops, retail shops for 25,000 people. We've been meeting with the owners to kind of talk about the work we do about let's keep it away from young people. But we have 15 shops, and they've even said, we're not all going to make it. There's too many of us, but we have tons of shops in Maine now, and medical providers, medical shops. And we have 167 craft breweries in Maine. And that is more than any other state per capita for persons. We have 1.3 million people in Maine, and we have 167 craft breweries. So we have plenty of access here in Maine. And then we also look at community norms, favorable. And you can, again, thumbs up. Do you have folks in your community that do fundraisers for youth programs like Project Graduation or booster clubs that have alcohol at them as part of the fundraiser? Do you have any thumbs up? We have Toys for Tots or something Christmas time. And they do this huge, awesome, fabulous party or, fundraiser. And the prize is a cooler full of high-end booze for the winner. And it's for young people's Christmas gifts, or just the places they hold it. So you just think about the community norms and the advertising and things that's out there. And it's just a beverage. So you can think about alcohol and other substances as well. Now in Maine, back to the craft breweries, we actually have some craft beers that have THC in them. Now you can't have alcohol in them as well, but people have now started talking about, well, maybe we should provide coolers at barbecues, one that says like, this is the THC beer, this is the non-THC. You're thinking like, oh my gosh, we have to get coolers to separate this because people wouldn't know. So the other thing is laws and enforcement, and that can be a protective factor if young people feel or believe that they would be caught for using underage. If they have an idea that they wouldn't be caught, they're more likely to use. We have a program here in Maine called the Home Alone program, and that's with the police department. And you can, as an adult, if you have young kids who you might be going away for a long weekend or a week vacation and leaving your teenagers at home, you can register your home with the police, and they can swing by while you're gone and just check to see that there's not 20 cars in your parking, in your driveway. And although not a lot of people have done the program, it's a great prevention strategy for a young person who can say like, hey, Wendy, heard your parents are going to Florida. We're all coming over to your house tonight. And Wendy can say, oh, you guys, sorry, my mom's an idiot. And she did that stupid Home Alone program, so we can't do it at my house. So you can see how some of these strategies can be preventative, even if someone doesn't use them. So laws and enforcement are really important as well. And the other thing that we did in South Portland years ago is we do have a program called SIRP, Student Intervention and Reintegration Program. And it is for students who have violated the policy in schools or in the community. And we were finding that law enforcement was not always equitable in how they enforced the policies and laws for young people. So they might, pull over a young person for operating under the influence, and they might say, oh, geez, you're on the football team. I know your dad. Why don't you get on home? But another student who might not be of this, Caucasian, that they might go, you're getting a summons. So we were finding like, hey, things were not being handled fairly, or that was the word on the street. So we put in their standard operating procedures. They adopted this policy that any time a young person does get held accountable for substance use, they all get referred to this program called SIRP. And it takes the judgment out of that officer deciding who goes, who doesn't go. And so things like that are things that young people helped us do, because they were the ones that said, hey, this is not fair. And so this is in their standard operating procedures now. It's not going to go away. So long-lasting impact. The other kind of environmental things, the price and promotion, young people are excellent at letting us know what they're seeing out there in social media, and learning last year from students saying, you know what, you can get vaping devices sent to your home when you're in 7th grade, and they'll actually, for a couple extra dollars, they'll put it in a candy box so your parents don't know. And you can use PayPal and they don't ask you how old you are. We would never have known that without young people telling us that. And now we're like, oh my gosh. We just found out in Portland and Bangor, Maine, they just passed ordinances, no more selling flavored tobacco products of any kind in those 2 cities. Hopefully it'll go statewide. But that is a huge impact from making a change of reducing access, pricing and promotion, all of that can be a big difference. And the other few last things are really about attitudes. So not an environmental strategy, but our parental attitudes play a huge impact. In fact, parents are one of the most biggest influences on a young person's either using or not using. They're a huge protective factor, or if they're favorable to using. And how many people, and you can thumbs up, how many have heard parents say, it's only weed, it's natural. At least it's not heroin. Right, you'll hear people, if I had to choose something for them to use, it's just, it's just weed. And, so we'll hear that. You go, they often say, just so if you are dealing like we are so much with cannabis, is to not compare it to other substances. Don't compare it to alcohol. Don't compare it to other substances. Compare it to not using it all. And that's a strategy. Don't go, well, it is, well, you can, this fight, but really talking about from using to not using and comparing that. And then youth attitudes and around substances have peer influence as a big piece. And again, if I feel everyone is doing it, then I'm more likely to do it. And even with students who are trying to quit, if I feel like no one else is trying to stop, I will have a harder time as well. So those peer influences have a big impact. So we're going to do a little bit more, and I'm going to need this brave, stubborn person in a minute. But these, again, are those risk and protective factors. I'm not going to read them all to you because you can read and you'll have the slides. But I wanted to point out a couple of things that we've already over here, kind of those risk factors we know in the community, and all of those. That's over there on the left-hand side. But let's look at the protective factors, and we're going to go over a couple today. One is refusal skills, and the other one is having future aspirations. And those are the two we're going to hone in on. So what I'd like to do right now, I'll stop sharing my screen, is there anyone brave? We're going to practice some refusal skills, and not about substances, but I'm wondering if there's anyone out here who's stubborn, who wouldn't mind doing a little role play with me. And I'm going to use my persuasion skills because I think actually prevention is persuasion and it is sales. And so I want to see if anyone out here is stubborn, who wouldn't mind. What I'm going to do is hit thumbs up or just nod quietly. Has anyone ever been offered a credit card at a clothing store? TJ Maxx, Eddie Bauer, wherever people, you're going to check out, would you like to open a credit card? Great. So there's a lot of people. So anyone that put their thumbs up, one of you is going to be the role player. And I just need you to say no to me. And I'm going to offer you, I'm going to pretend to be the cashier. And I'm going to try to wear you down and get you to open this credit card. So I see one last thumb up, but then they all of a sudden gone away. Is anyone willing to be brave? Think of, if you were a young person, this is healthy risk-taking. And it's good for the group. So really all you have to say no is, but I'm going to try to wear you down. Anybody willing?
I can help out.
Melvin, thank you so much. Would you unmute your head too? Or how do you say?
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you. Melvin, you're so great. Healthy risk-taking. Melvin, tell us a little bit about you before we get started.
All right. So I'm from Hamden, Connecticut, 23, turning 24 in September. Just graduated college in 2021, and I work at the Consultation Center.
Awesome. Where did you go to school?
I went to school at Curry College up in Milton, Mass.
Marvelous. Hello. So Melvin, I'm going to try to persuade you to open this credit card. Where do you shop for clothes? We'll get it really.
I'm big on Marshalls.
Okay, Marshalls is perfect for this.
Perfect,
so
perfect.
I'm going to pretend you are coming up with your purchases, and I'm going to try to get you to open a card. And whatever you do not allow it, but I'm going to just try to wear you down. So here we go. Hi, did you find everything you wanted today?
Yeah, I found everything I needed. I think everything went pretty well.
That's great. Would you like to open up a Marshall's credit card today?
Nah, I think I'm all right today.
You could save 15% on all your purchases.
I think I'm pretty good.
You could save $32 on what you bought today.
I'm good. I think I'll pass. Maybe another date.
Everyone in line has a card.
I'm good. I'm good.
Is there a good email to reach you at?
I don't have an email.
How about your home address so I can visit at Thanksgiving?
I don't like giving out my home address. That's too much personal information.
How did he do, everyone? How did Melvin do? It's denying. Nicely done. Thank you for doing that. Now, Melvin, you've probably gone through this before, and now you've gotten way better at it in real life. And now as soon as my lips start opening, you're like, nope, got it, cash, bye-bye, I don't need a bag, right? You're just done. Because, you know, I got to keep going, right? What about your email? What's your favorite pet? You know, like I could go on and on. It's really easy with things if you don't want something. It's easy to say no to something. For example, I won't eat liverwurst. My husband likes it and my dog. Anyone love liverwurst? Who's our German speaker? Someone who speaks German might like it, but I won't eat it. And so it's really easy to be like, no, gross, not having it, right? I don't have to worry. But if it's something I might want, that's hard. And so we actually really have to teach. This is a protective factor. And it always sounds so boring, like, we need to teach these young people refusal skills. But to make it fun and know that they have said no to stuff. And in their lifetime, they're gonna have to say no to stuff. And, you know, how do you do that? And to say no is a complete sentence. The end. And, you know, there's a lot of good materials out there of what you could say and all that. But so that is something, and again, Melvin, thank you so much for doing that. So that's refusal skills. Let's keep going here and let me see where we are. So risk and protective factors. And somehow there we go. A couple more things that I do know we have a lot to get through, not tons more slides, but more things to talk about. But I wanted to show you, and some of you are familiar with the strategic prevention framework that we use in prevention of all kinds. And I want to tell you how youth can be so helpful in doing this. And because we might think like, well, it's kind of boring and there's parts you just have to do, but this is ever changing. And one of the things I have found is that students have been critical in the assessment phase of this model and a lot of other pieces too. But what we have found last year, so again, our group started with 3 students. Last year we had 80 and we were hybrid and virtual. And usually our group meets in person every 2 weeks, but last year we met every week on Wednesdays when they had their day at home. And this is where we had 60, 80 students coming to the meetings at different times every week for an hour. And they didn't have the cameras on most of the time, but they were essential. We used Jamboards, we did breakout rooms, we used gallery walk, we used all these different ways for them to give us information on what are students using, what should parents know, what would you change about the community, what kinds of messages have you gotten from your family about life after high school, all these kinds of things. Now, if we were in person with students, I don't think we would have gotten as much feedback as we did because it was anonymous. And again, like just seeing your Jamboards already, like once someone gets started, it unfolds. So assessment was critical and they've helped us so much with that. And now in person, we continue to do that because we can meet now in person and they do kind of index cards or, you know, again, they can make it kind of anonymous of feedback on what we're doing, what will work, what are healthy coping skills, all kinds of questions. So using creatively, and because you're a statewide group, it'd be best if you did meet virtually most of the time, just so it's equitable and that people could come together. So using creative technology can really help with this model. So we have, we usually go to the middle schools. We weren't able to, so the capacity piece and implementation, we had to use Kahoot and do Jeopardy, you know, in that way. And 8th grade step up night didn't happen. So we had some of our star seniors speak to the middle school 8th graders about, you know, and answer questions again, virtually. So we had to be creative and do what we could. And some of the things that we found too, as you look at this model, is that in the middle there, sustainability and cultural competence. We're going to talk about sustainability in our school policy in a little bit, but cultural competence it's something huge. We have 100 new students this year who are coming from many different countries, Portugal, Afghanistan, all different African countries. Some students haven't been in school for 4 years in their transition to get to the United States. So we have students that haven't been in school. A lot of folks speaking different languages. Some of our students coming here know 7 languages and they're like 15 years old. It's just so impressive and awesome. But again, I was sharing that in the beginning, our group was white athletes, kind of well-to-do students, well off economically. They would say things like, oh, we won't wear cotton t-shirts. We'll wear the long sleeve whisk away. Just got to be like, what? But what we've had over the years, we did a program called Gateway to Opportunity a few summers ago, which was for low-income students, and it was a summer project. And we had 2 students, twin sisters from Rwanda who had escaped genocide a couple years before, and another student from Somalia. And that next fall, our group moved from 20 white athletes to 40 very diverse students because of these 3 women who have now still connected to the work we're doing. And one actually is an advisor to the Black Student Union at one of our middle schools now, one of these gals who worked with us when they were in high school. But this now has grown to these 80 students with very diverse backgrounds. And really, that's a critical thing to think about how to reach people and what different cultures we need to address. And translating different information to people for parents and the community members. How do you reach folks, different languages, getting interpreters? One of the things I shared earlier is that we went and visited the cannabis shops and we gave them this little card that I'll send to you to give to their customers. And so we've only done about 4 of the shops out of 15 and we have more to go. But one of the things that people don't realize or didn't know that if you are not yet a citizen in the United States, cannabis, marijuana is actually federally illegal for you. So if you're not yet a citizen, you can't purchase it. And you can actually be deported if you are caught with it. And so a lot of people didn't know that. Guess who didn't know that? Law enforcement didn't know that. The shop owners were like, what? And so that's cultural competence going, people need to know this. So we have the information translated in different languages just so people know how to get resources if they need to, and how to, just be aware of the laws that are out there. So that's really important. The other key thing here in assessment, years ago when we started, we had this map of South Portland and we did hotspot mapping. And if you haven't done this yet in your community, I highly recommend it. And we did it with the adult coalition members. And what they did was they put where in South Portland are high risk spots for substance use. Where are people using? And we're on the ocean here, and we have this long 6-mile place called the Green Belt where people can walk these trails right through South Portland. So people did this. They kind of pointed out where there was risky spots. Then we had the students do it, and they knew more than we did. And they knew where, and we also did where are protective places. And one thing that highlighted to me was they said, you know what, the Boys and Girls Club is a protective factor by day, but by night, it's actually a risky place, and that students hang out there after it's closed. Again, if you didn't work with youth and get their feedback on the stuff, you would never know this. So again, using these models is really important in doing and having young people be involved in that. So this next piece, again, people are familiar with this. Peers, young people know much more about all of these sectors than we do. We know some stuff. In fact, I don't even live in South Portland. I live an hour north of here in a little town called Dresden. So I'm not even from here. So I got to have the ears and eyes of people that live here and in this community. So students have impact and knowledge about all of these parts. And as I was sharing earlier, like public policy is a big piece that I'm going to cover about our restorative policy that we use here in South Portland. But also, again, those flavored tobacco bans are going to be so huge for reducing access and making that change. And then again, the media and culture of finding out all those social influencers that students are seeing all day long, and really finding out how young folks are being able to access substances through social media. So those are important pieces there, very knowledgeable. Now, we're going to do I think we'll still try to get this done because this is a good, I would highlight this as an activity everyone should do with anybody, parents, young people, your coalition members. And some people may have done this before, the pros and cons of using substances. And if we had time, we were going to use breakout rooms and split you up into 4 groups and have you brainstorm, again, the pros and cons of using and not using. And we're going to instead do it on the Jamboard. Who doesn't love that? And let's see if we can move it on over. If you will go to, you'll see on slide 3 of the Jamboard, those boxes. And we're going to start and just bang this out quickly. Could people with a sticky note tell me what are the good things about using substances? Think of alcohol, cannabis, nicotine, any kinds of substances. What's the good stuff? Why would people do it? And just jot down on the sticky note. And so if you'll just go back to that Jamboard link. Anyone got any ideas? What's the good stuff about using? What does it look like in the media? What's it in songs? How do they promote it? Anybody got any ideas? And this is on slide 4. Oh, good. So people have it on slide 3 too. Good, that's fine. Let's do that. We can do it all in one. That's marvelous. Fun, coping, to numb, feeling high or impaired, beautiful. Yeah, let's stay on this slide 3. That we'll just do it right here. Healthy, coping, social, escape reality. Looks cool, totally. It reduces anxiety. Escape reality. Love it. What can you do the next day, or what do people do at homecoming? Does anyone know what, when you come back to your homecoming, what do people do? Do they go up and go like, Melvin, I loved your thesis paper. It was so wonderful. I think one of the key things is storytelling from substance use that next day, right? Create memories, right? So yeah, you guys have a lot of good stuff. Now go down below. What are some downsides of using substances? What are the not so good things? And that's just right below under in blue. What are the downsides? Poor judgment, memory loss, feeling lousy, hungover, lack of control, regrets, addiction, bad for your health, right? The next day it feels bad. How could it affect school? Health risks, bad grades, right? Grades, getting kicked off of teams, the stigma of using, all kinds of downsides. Could it be costly? That box, downsides, missing school. Like I said earlier, I teach the class for folks who get arrested for operating under the influence. If you get an OUI in Maine, you get a star on your license for 10 years and you can't get into Canada. And anytime you get pulled over after an OUI, they know you already have gotten an OUI. Overdosing, we had over 6,000 overdoses this year in Maine. 600 of those ended in fatalities. So yeah, a lot of not good things. Let's move over to the cons of not using. What's the downsides of not using? and I'm a young person, I'm a teenager, feeling left out, FOMO, fear of missing out, boring, what people think of me, I'm lame, won't look cool. What do teens in movies look like who don't use? Who were those kids? The dork, nerd, band kids, sciencey, right? And then let's just for time-wise, yeah, loser, so lame, dude. What might be the pros of not using? What might be some good reasons not to use? Better health, healthy living. Would it be easier to reach my goals? Brain development? Might I graduate on time? Better at all those things you folks said you were good at? Am I going to be better at those 3 different instruments I'm playing and those sports and art and my academics, right? So you guys, you have it going on. So I think this is an excellent tool, and I'm going to get us into the PowerPoint in a minute. Think about this. I know it's all crazy, and usually I just do this on a newsprint pad. And again, do this with any group because it comes from the group, and especially young people can look at it. And I'll ask you this: can you get the pros of using substances without using? And you can give me a thumbs up if you believe that's true. Could you relax, have fun, fit in, tell stories, make friends, look cool, right? So when you think about our work, we have young folks in every one of those boxes, right? We have folks who are using, folks who are not using, and we have to balance and think about how do we provide healthy, it's such a boring word, healthy alternatives to help with that age 13 risk-taking brain that is already developed. So it doesn't just like at 13, that's it. Throughout, now my brain is ready to take risks. And they say that when someone's by themselves, their level of risk is here, but when they're in a group, their level of risk goes up. So people go, I told her at dinner, like if you need a ride home, you call me. And she said she would. And again, OUI offenders, I'd ask them, like, did your parents say to call them at any time? And they all said yes. And did you ever call your parents? No, never called them. So again, just that risk taking. So how do we provide that? How do we prevent the negative things without using scare tactics? Because we know that doesn't work. So when we go like, if you ever drink alcohol, you'll go to the devil. And there's the new thing like 1 pill can kill and all of these things that are real scare tactic-y. But how do we prevent those? Because that's our work too. That's what prevention is. And then how do we support someone who's not using? And go like, you're not a dork. You're not lame. And you have more than 2 friends. One is a cousin and one's a pen pal you've never met, right? That might be the feeling. And then how do we get to them that long-term of not using? What are the pros of not using or not using now? Dare to delay, not never, but not now. Some of those messages. So I really encourage people to use that technique because it's just helpful for people to look at. We're going to keep moving on, and I'm just going to share some strategies that our group has done, and you can steal these ideas, and I can tell you more about them, but I wanted to just give some examples of really great work these students did, actually most of it during the pandemic. The first one is we have a program that we created that is statewide now. It started in South Portland, and it's called YEEP, and I'll send you the toolkit. It is the Youth Employee Assistance Program. And if you think about it, if you're in high school now or you were ever, did you ever work in the hospitality industry? And if so, were there substances in your workplace as a young person? Did you have access to substances? And again, you can put a thumbs up, or if you want to put in the chat and say what your job was. But for a lot of young folks, working is a risky environment for substances. And some pediatricians will even tell parents, don't let your kid work in high school. It's too risky. So we started a program, unfortunately, because of an overdose death of a student that had graduated the year before. And as the stories went and unfolded, he had overdosed on a number of substances, but he had started using in 8th grade. He started using marijuana. People knew about it. He had a single mom. He was an athlete. And then during that time in high school, he started working at restaurants, and he was a dishwasher. And they knew that he was using marijuana, but they were just glad he showed up. It's like 12-hour shift. It's boring. They're glad he came. And then over time, he started dealing. He worked at 3 different restaurants in South Portland, and by the end he was dealing, and they let him go. And again, there's reflection back that he had access to substances at the workplace. So this is a whole toolkit for employers to have to make their environment a healthy workplace. And so I'll share that with you. And we're creating a program actually for students to train them to be ready to be in the workforce. We don't want to say like, you can't have a job. And I even saw that people wrote, they had 2 jobs after school when you were growing up. We want people to work and have skills. So this is a toolkit, and to teach young folks, how would that go? And we have a lot of people that were waitresses and working in restaurants who had some negative experiences also with sexual assault kinds of combination. You think the crossover with that. So our students helped create this program, and now it's statewide and is being shared with other states. The middle one, Teen Text Line, this is a great example of why youth are important in prevention. We had an agency come to us and said, hey, we know we have some youth, we'd like to pick their brains for some ideas. We would like to create a suicide prevention app. And can you give us some ideas of what that would look like, and how could we work on that? And so they met with our students, and the students said, you know what, we would never put an app on our phone, a suicide app, and we wouldn't go to a website. But they said, well, you know what, we do have this text line. And the student said, you know what, we would text somebody. And it turns out the staff of this are young people. They're 18 to 24-year-olds. And the student said, yeah, we would do that. So our students helped create this imagery, and again, is statewide now, in that they wouldn't talk to someone on the phone, they wouldn't go in person, but they would text somebody. And so that really was helpful. I mean, this other group might have bought this huge app and had no one use it. And just to report, a lot of folks are using this teen text line now. And as you know, mental health's been a big issue. And then this other last picture here is the Black Student Union. We had a unfortunate incident with this, and I'll just put this down, but we had our principal put out an announcement a year and a half ago that there were some students that wanted to start Black Student Union here in South Portland High School, because we have an ever increasing diverse group of students. And so she put out a thing to all the staff, and it said, hey, put this out there. All Black and brown students are welcome to join. It's Thursday at 10. Come if you can, whatever. Well, one of these elder staff members wrote back to everyone, how about we have an all-white male Republican group? So with that response, which also made it into the news and radio and TV, everything, that person's no longer working here. There was a lot of backlash about that. But our students, as you saw in that poster, our students helped support the Black Student Union and put up these huge posters all through the school, and they're still up all over, almost 2 years later. And as you could see in this visual, that we have similar mission statements there. Our goal is to empower Black and brown students by holding a safe space for them to gather. And SoPo Unite, creating a safe, just and healthy community. SoPo Unite supports the BSU. And I think I shared earlier, now we have a BSU at one of the middle schools, again, facilitated by one of our former SoPo Unite alum.
Leanne, do you have a slide to share for that? Because I think you're not sharing the screen right now.
Oh, don't you just love technology? Let me see.
Yeah.
You do want to see this because they did such a great job. Okay, can you see that now? Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, we can, thank you.
Great. Okay, so we've got a few more quick things to do before our time is up. I'm going to send to you, and or maybe Wendy can put it in the chat, our visual of our restorative policy that we have here in South Portland. 2018, we changed our substance use policy at the high school from being punitive, suspending kids, to a restorative process. And it was passed by the school board, which was great. And I'll explain a little bit to you about the policy and how it has gone on and on to other states, other schools in Maine. So instead of, when I first started, I kind of asked, there's 900 students here, to ask the principal, like, how many students have been suspended? And he said, oh, about 6. And I said, well, it's interesting because the data shows that, 40% of the seniors have used something or other in the last 30 days, but you only have 6 or 7 kids that have gotten in trouble. So we were finding that teachers, if they saw a student who was impaired, kind of looked away and didn't really mention it because they knew if they brought it up, the kid was going to be out for 7 to 10 days out of their class. So maybe she's just tired. So people were reporting it. There's a lot of secrecy on athletic teams. So we changed this to a restorative process. And instead, if you see that handout, a student, the first, if they got caught or had it on them or were impaired, they go home that first day. But the next day they come back to school and they get a formal assessment from our licensed alcohol and drug counselor. And that determines the outcome of their response that would be appropriate for that student, depending on where they are in the continuum of use. And our superintendent at the time said, we need to treat this as a clinical issue. And so they get assessed, and then there's possible responses, a menu, if you will, of what would be appropriate. And we have a full-time in-school restorative coordinator. So a student would go to his classroom, maybe get academic support, might have to do some community service. They might do our 1-hour vape intervention, or again, that SERP program I mentioned that the police also have as a referral. We have a behavioral health liaison that we're going to have students meet with. We have some students now who are in 9th grade who have already had 3 offenses this year because they started during COVID vaping at home for 2 years before they even got here. So we have a lot of students who are addicted to nicotine and other substances. So we changed the policy. They also have to do the restorative questions. I don't know if people are familiar with this. They have to write out the answers to what happened, what were you thinking at the time, about what were you thinking about it at the time, what have you thought about since, who has been affected by what you've done, and what can you do to make things right? And so we've been using this policy since 2018. And we also offered a course, a 40-hour course to staff who actually got like a bump up in some of them for their salary because of the continuing education credits. We knew that if the staff wasn't on board and didn't understand restorative practice, the policy wouldn't work. So we did those things parallel. We changed the policy, and we got a lot of press from the Pew Charitable Trust, and we were in papers across the country about this. We were one of the only schools that would do this. Some people use restorative process with other behaviors, but not for substance use. So we are one of the only schools in Maine that are doing it. It's really spreading. You'll see here on the left, we went up to the State House, and now our policy is the model policy for the state from the Department of Education. We also had students go and talk to legislators, not old people. And then we also changed the athletic code. It used to be that you get kicked off the team if you were got caught. And now you don't get kicked off the team. You can still practice and go to meetings. You can't play in games for a 10-day period, but you can still be part of the team. And the students met with coaches, our student athletes in part of our SOPO Unite group. They met with the coaches and said, when you kick someone off a team, they don't come back. And there's secrecy and shame. And as a protective factor, as many of you wrote, you were athletes, that might have been the one thing keeping someone in school. There's a school in Northern Maine that if you get in trouble in 9th grade, you get kicked off the teams for all 4 years. You don't get to play at all. So you think about what, you know, like, why would you take away the one good thing and maybe the healthy adult? And some people like their coaches better than anybody else and have an impact. So we changed this policy, and it's really grown and gone on to other big things. And so I would love to give you more information about that, but we're running out of time. So my final couple moments, and I'll say this fast and you can see this here, is WIFM, and you might know this, what's in it for me? Here's a long list of things. Why would a young person want to be a part of the NARC club? Which it isn't the NARC club, but why would someone want to be interested in doing prevention? These are the benefits of being in it. We have students, this is Grace Rendy over on the right. She saved $5,000 on her college tuition just by being in our group. So she wrote that in her essay, and they knocked out $5,000. So I would sell that to students like, you can save money by being in our group. I do a lot of letters of recommendations and references and scholarship references for students. We have senior internships and powerful ones. So they it counts as a whole class. This one student, Anna Foley up here, she worked on a whole project to move health class, which is in 10th grade. We need to move it to 9th and 11th grade. You have health all your life. Right now we have it in 10th grade for one little couple months, and that's it. She did a survey and has brought it to the school board, and we're working on changing that. So you think about, like, that's a big deal that someone could work on that and get that done. Leadership opportunity. We have student run meetings and assemblies. They love it. Anytime there's a microphone, they'll do it. Lasting impact. Like I said, we will never go back to suspending students. Like we kind of just, when we do trainings, go like, we would never go back to kicking someone out for 10 days for substance use. They do get kicked out for a little time if they're dealing, just so people know. And I can share all the details about the policy. We get to work with other communities. We do collective impact youth summits with other high schools in the area prior to COVID. Public speaking skills. They've been on TV. Students get those skills. We have career directions that people are now taking. The gal that was going to present tonight created the BSU poster and the suicide text line poster, and is going to school at NYU to study marketing. And she said that by being part of this group, she really found her love for that piece. And then that mentoring piece is huge and leaving that legacy. So a couple last things. We won't do this because we're running out of time, but we know that having future aspirations is a protective factor. So especially around marijuana use. And so you'll see this visual here. But one of those key things is for people to think about what's next. And young people are only here for such a short amount of time. How can we support them? So our students actually did a senior panel speaking to parents about what's been helpful and not helpful in planning their next steps after high school. And our parents that came were like, this has been the best session ever. And these students really shared about their experience. And now this principal who's in the background said, I want you to do an assembly for juniors in high school about your advice for planning for the future. And then finally, this is Jake Poole. He started our group. He was one of those 3 original students. He's a senior in college at Bryant University and is now going on to California to become a performer in singing. And I think back to when we had him be our keynote speaker at one of our summits. And I just think, wow, this had an impact on him. So I just want to leave you with this, and then questions, and Wendy will take it over. But this is my favorite saying, connection is the opposite of addiction. And one student said, for our next summit, let's call it this: find your place, leave your mark. So there it is. I'm going to stop sharing. And I know we're almost out of time. Can you believe it? I could go on and on. I'll mute myself.
I'm not so sure we want you to mute yourself though, Leanne. You may have some questions. I think Ina had a comment. Am I right, Ina?
Actually,
yes.
No, I was, okay, wait a minute.
Oh, good. You have restorative process too. That's awesome.
Yes, New Haven just started.
Oh, good. Well, you and I shall chat sometime.
Yes.
It's not as fun as it sounds. And I will say this, when we brought it up to students, like, what do you guys think? And they said, I think we'd rather be suspended. And I was like, what? are you sit at my couch for some days? But if you think about this, this is not a funsy cuddle response. I'll look at Jessica. Jessica, when's the last time you apologized to someone face to face and owned up to your behavior?
Probably not that long ago. I feel like to my partner.
Oh, good. You could raise your hand if you. Yeah. How many people love doing that? I mean, I don't even remember. Remember, you're a kid and your parents would like, you have to say sorry to Wendy, give her a hug. You're like, oh, geez. But this restorative process is hard. It's very adult. It's not, to have to say what I did and how I impacted and what, training other youth to be peer support. One quick story on we had a golf student on the golf team that got in trouble for use, and the coach made him stand up on the bus. This is not what I would recommend. Stand up on the bus, apologize to the team, and tell them why you were not going to be playing golf today in the final meet, state championship, whatever. And so he had to stand up and apologize. And one of our SoPo Unite students, who was a golfer, said to him, "Do you want me to stand up with you?" And I mean, if you're not crying right now, you don't have a heart. So training other students in restorative practice, I mean, that's what we're doing now. We're doing a captain's training so that they can support their peers, because this is scary and not fun that you have to apologize to your teacher, your coach, the assistant principal, etc. So,
Leanne, thank you so very much for all of your information and taking us down this path tonight. I know that you did share so much that I think will be useful to so many people. We really appreciate it. And I just want to say another thank you to Demas and to the New England PTTC for help making tonight happen. For those of you who are still on the call, please just take a quick moment. I'm going to launch a poll and ask you just for some feedback. If I can get to it. Let me see where we are.
Ooh, and should I look away?
I don't think that you'll see all the answers, but you can, yeah.
Oh, good. I wouldn't know. Yes. I hate feedback.
It's anonymous. It is anonymous here. So, but it does help us as we move forward in planning for future trainings. And speaking of which, we do have another session that we are putting together for next month that will be available to youth and to advisors, both those that are on, that are currently involved with our Youth Action Council and those who may be considering it in the future. Speaking of which, our Youth Advisory Board does have our meeting coming up here at the end of the month. It's a February 23rd. It is a Zoom meeting at 3 o'clock, and we are looking forward to getting all together again. This will only be my second time with the group, so I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone. If you know of anyone or anyone has not been part of this group before that is interested, they're more than welcome to join us. You can go right to our website at www.preventionworks.org and register there, and we'd love to have you. You just want to come and check it out. I'm going to end the poll for right now. Thank you so much for your feedback. And I also then want to share with you some of our contact information. Please do stay in touch with us. Our website and on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We have accounts there when the information is shared regularly. This is my contact information. If you have any questions about tonight or any of the upcoming trainings or about the Youth Advisory Board, please don't hesitate to give me a ring or send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. And again, we want to thank you for your time tonight. I know your time is valuable. And Leanne, thank you once again for your time in putting all this together for us and sharing such valuable information.
Thanks for having me. Oh, I was just going to say, and if you're single, go to your reunions. There'll be somebody left.
I'll remember that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a wonderful night.